You're probably like, Julia, why the hell are you dressed up? Why are you wearing that dress that you wore back in like 5th grade when you went as Merida for Halloween? You tell me. I don't know why I'm going out for this review. I really don't. Maybe for the money, for the views. Today I will be reviewing BookTube's favorite, BookTwitter's favorite, Cruel Prince by Holly Black. So basically, the backstory with this was, for some reason, I had this urge to read a high fantasy YA novel that had some romance, because I really wanted to read something that was kind of like A Curse of Dark and Lonely, because recently I read A Heart So Fierce and Broken. And of course, I was like, everyone and their mother and their horny grandma have been talking about this book and this series, and it just ended. So you know what? Let's read this book, because do I know anything about this book? No. Did I just like randomly buy this book at work and instantly regret it when I started reading it? Yep. I'm usually one of those people that do agree with a lot of people with book hype, I think, but I feel like in the most recent past months or years of BookTube, the books that people have really loved and enjoyed, I personally haven't. I know I rated it high on like Twitter, but I really regret it. Red, White, and Royal Blue. Great characters, no plot. I was ready for it because everyone keeps talking about this book, and Peyton was really excited that I finally decided to read this book. This is going to be a spoiler review. So if you are just here for my overall thoughts of this book, I'm just going to tell you this now. You don't have to read this book. You aren't missing out on anything except angst and just like nothing you really do care about until like 240 pages in. I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. I'm still debating with this book. Like, I've heard people say this is the first book in a series. And like, here's the thing. Yeah, I get that. And the other books go in totally different directions. I've heard that from everyone. I'm not gonna give this book the benefit of the doubt and say that it's a good book because it's gonna get better in the series. Usually with books I read, if it's not a good first book, then why even continue on? And even if those books are gonna be better, everything established in this book isn't gonna matter to me. Basically my non-spoilery part of this review. Now I'm gonna go in-depth spoilers with this video. So if you haven't read this book and you do want to read it for some reason, you gotta click away now. But thank you for giving me the view. Now everyone, let's get into this book. So we start off this book with the prologue, which I really don't get why Holly Black has 2 different points of views with the prologue and the chapter. I just don't like that. I just think the writing style in 3rd person is so much better than 1st person. I really wish she stuck with that writing style than the I did this, I did that. I'm such a badass Jude. I think I would be less annoyed with Jude if we got that 3rd person point of view, because I was actually intrigued with the prologue. I thought it was really epic and like horrifying. Then we get to chapter 1. It's only 1 line and it's so underwhelming. Your book starts off with, "In fairy, there is no fish sticks, no ketchup, no television. I don't care." So then we go into chapter 2. Basically, this is an introduction to the world that we haven't experienced, but Jude has for the past few years. Now, I think this plot is pretty interesting. I think that is a cool ass plot to have the human character in the fairy world, but they have no connection to it other than that their half-sister is half fairy. They're not the cool ones. They're the outcast. I think that's great. So basically we go into the analysis of like fairies, and I don't know what this was. Like, I think she's given the exposition and they're saying like, oh, there's fairy ointment over the eyes so they can see magic. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Fairy ointment? You rub it into your eye? Like ointment? You go like, ah, yes, now I can see the magic that unfolds in the fairy world. And then we get into how Jude has her hair like horns because it looks like fairy or something like that, and like giving Princess Leia a run for her money. Good job, Jude. Woohoo. So we go into like for how humans survive in the fairy world, or just barely survive in the fairy world. And basically they say that like, oh, the dancing, once you begin, mortals won't be able to stop and they'll die. And they'll just keep on dancing. And for some reason, I thought of 12 Dancing Princesses. I just thought of that ending where they did that magic thing with the flower and like the villains went off dancing and they're dancing forever. Like, is that where Holly Black got that idea? She was watching 12 Dancing Princesses and she's like... Then, as we get farther and farther into the story of the dance, we meet BookTwitter's favorite boy, Carden. Carden is introduced, and his crew is introduced, I feel like they're the Heathers. They're the popular people that basically bully everyone that's under them. Like, I just kept imagining Carden in this, like, red outfit with, like, a scrunchie, and he's, like, ready to, like, murder someone. Like, literally everyone in this book had attempted to murder Jude at least once in this story, or even more in this story. And then we got to the part that I think was the first introduction that, he has a tail. Now, I joke about this too many times to count, that Carden has a tail. I think it's the funniest thing ever. Like, I can do a whole stand-up comedy routine based off Carden having a tail. I'm telling you all, I made fun of it way too many times. Like, I don't know why she kept on referencing it. I don't know why we kept focusing on it. I don't know why Jude was. Is it a turn on for her? Is she into humans? Is she into fairies? So the next chapter begins, and we are introduced to fairy school. Yes, this is a thing. I didn't know why we decided. Holly Black was like, you know what? We're in another world. We're in a fantasy world filled with fairies. Let's just put our main character in fairy high school. Why? Why? This is not what I signed up for. I signed up for fantasy world and badassery, not fairies bullying the main character, almost murdering her. Which, here's the thing. That's the whole plot of the story. The plot of the story is that the fairy world sucks ass, and that fantasy worlds don't live up to our own expectations, and living in this world can alter people, making Jude like an annoying ass person. Because Jude has grown up in this thing, and basically is not a good person because of it. And she's been grown up to be taught that power and corruption of power, and that she needs to steal power to get the power. And I totally get that. But if you're going in that direction, and you have nothing happening so far, then how are you going to get your readers to that page when something happens? It's just that I was just basically pushing through this book because I knew at some point something was going to happen, because everyone kept telling me, Julia, when you get to this certain page, something will happen. But I won't care because I don't care about any of the characters. At least have one character. At least have maybe the main character have at least one good redeeming quality about her that will make her likable for you to follow her. Jude, at some points, there's one point where I did like her, which I'll go into later, but other than that, she has no other redeemable qualities. You have to have some of that human essence that she still has. And then we get into Carden and like his Heather group. Basically, there's one point in the story at the high school fairy school, he kicks dirt on her lunch, and I was like, wow, is this second grade? These bullying strategies are so preschool. But then, I mean, he tries to drown her and stuff like that. But anyway, we'll get to that later. We get more and more into the story, and when I was reading this book, I was like, I really like that we're getting a full human perspective rather than like a half a fairy main character human. I take that back, because the best character in this whole book is Vivi. Vivi, she's a lesbian, she has a great story arc, and one of the only redeemable characters, but no, we don't focus on her because number one, she's not straight, and number two, because she's an actual redeemable character. I rather have a whole story about her dealing with this terrible side of her, being taken away from her house, being the reason why her other two sisters were taken away, and her having to go into the human world and falling in love, and already having to deal with the lesbian side. Like, think about the possibilities you could have had with that story. But you give us Jude! Even the name is stupid! So then we get into chapter 6. Holly Black was like, oh, I should probably tell the readers this. I'm just gonna have Jude tell the readers herself. And it becomes something where she points out you. Yes, you, the reader. Wouldn't it become one of these stories? Is this whole book Jude is talking to us? She's telling her side of the story? She's telling us about the fairy world? Wouldn't that break the fairy law for them to be in secret? Why is she talking to us humans? We get more and more into how fairies are and how humans are, and there's at one point where Jude explains that they do have periods, and I was like, I didn't need to know that. You literally just explained periods just to let us know that they have sex the same way humans does, and that's how they have children, is the same way. I'm glad that you talked about periods. No one ever talks about periods, and it should be, especially in YA with young females, there should be talk of periods. I get that, and I respect that. Just the way she talked about it, I was like, I really don't care. Just give us more Vivi. Just give us more Vivi, and we're good. Cut out that period talk. Give me Vivi. Give me the lesbian. After Vivi and Jude like, come back from the human world, which I don't get why they don't just stay in the human world. Like, I get they're like, oh, well, we don't have any parents. Would you rather be foster family adopted than be in a fairy world where basically everyone wants to murder and kill you? I'm just saying, which one would you rather have? But of course, Jude is like, I want to be different. I want to be the best swordsman, blah, blah, blah. And then they go back to fairy school the next day, and we experience more second grade bullying from our book tutor's favorite white boy, Carden. As Heather Chandler, I mean Carden, bullies Jude more, she depicts if she should kill him or not. I've come to the conclusion if you stay in a fairy world long enough, you'll become a psychopath. Don't know if that's the right terminology, but we're just gonna go with it. Then we get into more of Jude going to that prince side and spying for them. And they get into, I guess, Carden's family's house or castle. Basically, she sees that a human slave girl is there, and she kind of sees herself in there. And this raises up a question for me. So do people like fairies go into the human world and steal humans? Is this like a Curse So Dark and Lonely thing for them? Or is this a thing where they go to them and say, hey, the fairy world exists, and trick them into coming? Like, I'd rather have more explanation on that than talking about fairies' ovulation system. Then we get to see that Jude gets to see that Carden gets slapped and whipped. I hate this trend. I hate this cliche. I get he's gonna be abusive towards other people when he's abusive, but I just hate that. Having a character be abused does not exclude the abuse that they're giving to other people. I just hate that. I just think that's a stupid cliche. This is like Billy from Stranger Things. Billy is not only racist, abusive, many other things, but people try to be like, oh, but he's also abused by his father, so it's okay. No, it's not. Stop saying that. It's not okay. You need to know that Carden is terrible. I don't know if he grows or something, but I still don't allow him to be this way. And I know that's the way the world is in his world, but you still need to realize, bit of an asshole. Like, I'm not attracted to him whatsoever because he's such an asshole. He just annoys the crap out of me like every character in this book. And basically then we get into Jude talking about his dreamy expression side, and I was like, no, this isn't Heather's the Musical. We are not letting the abusive asshole love interest get away with this, okay? You know? And then we get into Locke, who was barely introduced. I really didn't care about him. Him and Jude suddenly share a kiss together, and I'm like, okay, where did this guy come from, and why should I care? If Holly Black really wanted you to be like, oh, plot twist, like Locke and Jude aren't gonna end up together, you need to have more emotion and more care for that romance if you're going to do something like that. Like, because when it's revealed that Jude's sister is gonna be engaged to him, I was like, oh, okay, well, I really don't care about that, but okay, go right ahead. So then we also get into this whole Jude thing where basically she decides to save the human girl, and this comes at a point where I'm just like, finally, we are getting some Jude character development, or at least some gain of respect for Jude. Because basically she says that she wants power so she can give it to the humans and let them have respect, because of course she hasn't been getting respect for the past how many years she's been alive in this world because she's human. Earlier when she was being lodged to that one dude, the guy who's later murdered or whatever, I don't know, I'll have power. And I'm like, okay, but why do you care about that? What are you gonna gain from this? 50 pages later, she's like, I will have power so I can help the humans. Yeah, where was that when you were being knighted or whatever? Then I would have cared about you more until this moment exact in time on page 183. And then the girl dies. Nice going, Jude. This is what happens when you try to do something nice. It fails miserably. And then we get into nothing else happening throughout the book. Up until this book, I was gonna give up. I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, nothing is happening. Why is everyone saying this book is action-packed? And Peyton says to me, when you get to page exactly 240, this book is 360 pages long. Why would I wait 240 pages for something to actually happen and I care about? When the thing happened on 240, when that guy is murdered, I was like, oh, okay, so we're gonna go in this direction. And I was like, okay, this is interesting enough. 100 pages later, the book ends. And I'm like, no. And then they close it off. They close the book off. The book felt so rushed at the end because she spent 240 pages setting up this stupid ass world with these stupid ass characters, and in the last 100 pages it all ends and it feels like you can just cut off right there. Like, I don't know where this story is gonna go in the second and third book. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it just feels like everything is resolved and there's nothing else she can go in this direction. There was just nothing really there for me to care about. There's just not really a turnaround for these characters that I can see in the future. I need to at least have some character likability by the end of the first book so that I can go into the second book and actually want to read the second book. I understand how she made this like, oh, these characters you're not supposed to like because they grew up in this terrible world. I get that. This is like how I feel towards Chaos Walking. I feel like with the Chaos Walking trilogy, Todd has grown up in this very male-dominated, toxic environment, and as Viola comes around, she kind of teaches him not to be this way. You need to have some character like that, because if you don't, I understand that she's trying to say these things, but it's just not working for me. Here's the thing, I'm one of those people that you need to have good characters for me to care about this story. There needs to be something there for me to care about. If you have no plot, at least have good characters. If you have no good characters, at least have a good plot. I think the only thing that I was like interested in with this story is that the ideas that were behind it, and I'm gonna get so many hate comments about how I don't understand that I'm supposed to hate all the characters. I do understand that. If you want to have this world and you want to have characters that people you're not supposed to like, then what is gonna get me through this? I am audiobooking the second book because I feel like I do want to complete this trilogy. I need to have some fantasy trilogy on my belt or something because I just felt like I need to have something completed. You know, I want to be in the popular ends of booktube. So if you guys liked this review, I hope you like, comment, and subscribe. Comment down below. Did you like Girl Prince? Did you not like it? Did you go with the flow of booktube and book Twitter, or were you with me that's like, you sure about this? Thank you all for watching this video. Bye.